He was a menace to knights, his skills so insane that constant fighting and winning eventually bored him. But when he casually challenged Damian, his dominance crumbled. He tried hard to land even a single hit, yet every strike was dodged. Damian returned with sharp punches and swift kicks, knocking the cockiness out of the brute without even drawing his sword. That only made him angrier. He unleashed everything he had, and as Damian reached for his blade, the thug smirked, thinking his strike would land first. But the diabolic slash Damian unleashed did more than cut his sword. It nearly took his head in a single stroke. Yet it was only Damian's killing intent, forcing him to bow before the duel even began. His father called out, asking what he was doing, but he was only grateful his neck was still intact. When Damian asked if he still wished to challenge him, the thug collapsed to the ground in fear. Let's dive into a complete recap of how it all started. The story starts with monsters brutally killing the protagonist's younger brother, sister, and his whole family. The only swordsman remaining is fighting a monster death knight, but the worst part is that he is on the brink of losing. Before dying, he slashed his sword hard on the death knight's head and then turned to ash. That slash then breaks the knight's armor, and suddenly his red eyes turn normal. Just then, his memories flash back that he is Damian, and due to him, his family got killed. While the Lich King is vowing that it crumbled the human kingdom down to his knees, our boy keeps his calm to seek the opportunity to strike this damn skeleton. Then he gathers his demons and calls his Death Knight to bring the Imperial crown. As the hero steps forward, the Lich admits he can't wipe out humanity without his help, and tells the boy to name any reward he desires. But then he wonders that the knight is indeed his pathetic slave, so why bother asking? Just then, our hero throws the crown in the air and then cuts it through with his blade. The Lich already pulls the defensive spell, and his minions gather at his side, all pointing weapons at our hero. The Lich is about to turn our hero into dust when he feels his body has already been pierced with a sword. Damian gasps that he finally got his own willpower. The Lich has formatted his previous existence, but he could not remove his soul, so our hero was always trapped. But now he is finally free. The Archlich calls him his greatest creation and lets him unleash his fury one last time before taking control again. The Demon Kings charge in together, but just like that, a burst of purple light wipes them all out. The Archlich can't believe what he's seeing. He tries to summon a huge army of corpses to overwhelm Damian, but Damian just raises a hand and tells them to stop. Suddenly, black wings extend from his back as he commands the undead to surrender. He clenches his fist, and the undead freeze, glowing from within before bursting apart. The aura sweeps across the battlefield, and the Archlich trembles, realizing he's created something that rivals a god. He tries to stall, but it's clear he's just buying time. The Death Knight thinks back on all those years he was stuck, consumed by the thought of taking down the Archlich. A blue aura surrounds him as he gets ready to unleash a sword move powerful enough to slice through a Demon King's soul. The Death Knight steps up and unleashes his move, cutting right through the Archlich. At first, the Archlich seems fine, looking down at himself without a scratch and chuckling, thinking it's a joke. But then, a black aura bursts from his throat, and he screams as the slash tears open the sky, pulling him into a swirling vortex. His eyes flicker before an explosion erupts above him, and his skull crashes to the ground beside the Death Knight. The Death Knight crushes it underfoot, telling him to rot in hell. The Death Knight drops to his knees, relieved it's finally over, but there's still one more thing he needs to do. He raises his sword, feeling the need to apologize, even if it's too late. Under the Archlich's control, he killed his own family without even wanting to. With blood spilling, he thrusts the blade into his own body. A voice calls out his name. As darkness fades and light returns, he opens his eyes to see Louise, asking why he's sleeping outside. He smiles, relieved to see her before hell tries to drag him back down. But something feels off. She looks way too young. She laughs, telling him to get inside before their dad scolds him again, saying that big sister is always around. As she runs off, he whispers that he's pretty sure he destroyed this mansion. He glances at his hands, wondering if this is all a dream or if being a Death Knight was the dream itself. He picks up a twig, aims it at a rock, and thinks it feels right. He charges forward and thrusts it. The twig snaps, but the rock doesn't budge. He bursts out laughing, realizing how ridiculous it is. That rock totally won. But then laughter turns into trembling as he clutches his head, looking up at the sky and dropping to his knees. Rain starts pouring down as Damian holds his chest, muttering that this isn't a dream. He really did go back to the past. We get to know more about Damian before he became a Death Knight. His dad once yelled at him, wondering why he was always always causing trouble and how he got kicked out of a bar. Then there was that time his brother barged into his room, furious because Damian had punched the young master of the Lion Bloom March. Thanks to him, Louise ended up being dragged away in a carriage to get married. Damian feels like he's just messed up everything for his family. His mom lost it one time, crying and screaming because he borrowed money against their land as collateral, which made them lose everything. That talent got him exiled by his dad. The day he left, Louise called out, offering him some cash and telling him he needed to be happy. He was surprised she still cared, even after he ruined her life. He hesitated, but eventually took the money and ran. That day felt like he was escaping from his own family, and he finally understood what real guilt and shame felt like. He broke down crying. Now that the rain has stopped, he's reflecting on how he ended up back in the past. He wants to apologize, but this feels like a miracle. The clouds clear, and a ray of light hits him. His hand shakes as he realizes something he dreads. His body is so weak he can barely use the wave-breaking technique, which powers up his strikes. He learned this move after taking down the knight known as the Castle Wall Destroyer. Someone yells, "Young Master!" Damian turns to see a kid trying to remember his name. Was it Victor? Victor tells him Louise said to come back and that their patriarch is furious. Damian asks what he did to upset him, and Victor looks shocked that he doesn't remember anything. Inside the Haxon Viscounty, his dad, Paul Osborne Haxon, is really worked up. He calls Damian a bastard and swings a sword at him. Damian dodges while his mom and sister try to pull Paul back. Paul yells, asking if Damian went to a bar again, and keeps bringing up how he disgraces their name. But Damian just smiles. He's genuinely happy to be back here. His mom and sister plead with Paul to stop. Damian stays quiet, thinking about how long it's been since he got scolded. Finally, Paul lowers his sword and asks Damian what's going on. Damian admits he has no explanation. Paul is taken aback. He thought there'd be excuses. Damian says he's a mess, and it's all on him. Damian bows and promises he'll fix his mistakes and come back to deal with it. Everyone in the room is confused. Paul mumbles that maybe he hit his head too hard. Damian heads out to the merchant city of Landor. In a narrow alley, Victor asks if he's really going in there, warning him that the place is tied to some shady people and things could get messy. Damian shrugs, saying Victor can bail if he's scared. Damian plans to apologize to the owner in hopes of making up for some of the mess he created. As they pass a church, he admits he doesn't even know how he came back, but if this is a second chance from God, he won't waste it. When they reach the door, two bouncers block their way. One tells Damian to stay away. He recognizes them and says he just wants to apologize. The bouncers laugh, saying he's acting all nice now that he's a noble. One of them starts trashing his family, mocking his sister's looks, and saying she's the only decent thing in their family. Then he slaps Damian, telling him to bring his sister if he wants forgiveness. Damian thinks this is too much. He grabs the guy's knife, but suddenly his hand gets chopped off and falls to the ground. Both bouncers are in shock as he drops to his knees, screaming. Damian steps forward, saying if they want to see what the eldest son of a worthless family is really like, he'll show them. Victor watches from the alley, thinking his buddies lost it. As Bandana screams, a crowd starts to gather. The second guy steps up. He rolls up his sleeve to show off a tattoo on his hand. Suddenly, Damian remembers the Black Snakes. They were starting to make a name for themselves back in the day, and this bar was one of their hangouts. He recalls getting beaten and humiliated here for just complaining about the overpriced food. Looking back, he realizes he deserved an apology, not the other way around. The thug scoffs at Damian's smirk and comes at him with a sword, but he misses. Damian kicks the guy's leg and slams him face first into the ground. The thug groans, coughing and holding his nose. Standing over him, Damian says taking him out would be too easy. He grabs the man's leg, blood sprays, and the guy's screams echo through the alley. Both thugs end up hurt and trembling on the ground. Then someone yells out asking what's going on. Damian turns to see a group forming. They want to know if he's part of another gang and where he came from. Damian coolly says it's nothing like that. He just came to apologize, but it turns out he's the one who deserves an apology. The lead guy saying he doesn't get what Damian's talking about, but since he's not giving a straight answer, they're just going to beat him down. He signals his crew to attack. 3 thugs come at him and Damian sighs, feeling annoyed. He takes a deep breath and charges in. In a flash, he slices off the first guy's arm, then the second's, and leaves the last one without hands. That guy's going to have a tough time handling his business after this. Damian stops, and the lead thug watches in shock as his guys scream in pain. Panting, Damian asks if the thug still wants to fight. The thug nervously says no and offers to make things right if Damian can forgive them. Damian just goes after him. The guy turns to run, but Damian grabs him and there's a loud crunch. Inside the bar, the crowd is chilling with their drinks when the doors burst open. Everyone turns to see Damian dragging the thug by the shoulders. Damian drops him and says this is what happens when people don't listen while he's being polite. The crowd stares in horror as Damian wipes blood off his face, confused about why everyone is panicking. When they scatter in fear, he shrugs and thinks whatever, at least the annoying ones are gone. From above, a voice asks about the noise and the missing guards. It's Anderson Holm, the bar's owner. Damian looks up and asks if that's him. He calmly mentions he dealt with the guards outside. Anderson notices another thug knocked out on the floor. Damian introduces himself, and when Anderson finds out he's from the Haxenvi County, he thinks it's a joke. Damian insists he's not here to stir up trouble. He just wants an apology. Anderson scoffs and asks what he's smoking. Damian explains that the food was ridiculously overpriced, like some wannabe Salt Bay spot. He complained, got beaten up, thrown out, and now everyone's calling him a drunk and a disgrace. His family's reputation has taken a hit, too. Anderson laughs, saying that honor means nothing if your family's got none left. Damian realizes this convo is going nowhere. Anderson lifts his cane, telling Damian a quick sorry isn't enough, and that he needs to pay for the damage. Damian chuckles, ready to let it go. But if that's how Anderson wants to play, then fine. He charges forward, jumps off a table, and flies at him with his sword drawn. But then, out of nowhere, a guy drops down from the balcony and hits him mid-air with a slice of blue energy. Damian quickly blocks it and lands on his feet. Anderson grins, saying Sir Ted just showed up right on time. Damian's surprised. He didn't expect a knight to be hanging around a bar. We're getting into the whole knight system. Knights train in martial arts and are ranked by skill. Trainees are at the bottom, apprentices are in the middle, and official knights are at the top. These official knights can tap into aura, slicing through mountains and smashing castle walls like it's no big deal. They're basically superhuman. Anderson was going on about how Ted's an apprentice knight and tight with the Black Snake boss, claiming Damian's as good as dead. Damian realizes if Ted's just an apprentice, it makes sense why he felt such a weak aura earlier. Ted's shocked since he hadn't even turned it on. How did Damian figure that out? Damian thinks Ted got passed over for being an official knight because he just doesn't have the skills. Ted grits his teeth. Ted loses it and charges in, yelling that he'll tear Anderson apart. Ted swings hard, but Damian dodges him easily. Ted keeps trying to hit him, going for his head, but Damian keeps sidestepping and points out that even though Ted's swings are all over the place, they do pack a punch. Ted gets serious and starts charging up aura for a big move. Damian realizes Ted's about to pull off a secret technique and gets ready to counter. Just as Ted's about to land a hit, the scene shifts to a flashback. A ghostly assassin is seen taking out an old knight. The assassin's bored, says killing humans is lame, and tells Damian to scram if he values his life, warning him he's about to witness the blade of death. To the assassin, human bodies are just water. Slicing through them is a piece of cake. He mocks Damian for sticking around when he had a chance to escape. Then he hears something strange, flesh regenerating. He looks and sees his body reattaching. Stunned, he whispers that it can't be real since he cut Damian in half. But there's Damian, calm and collected, slicing the assassin in two with his bare hands using that same blade of death technique. As he dies, the assassin laughs, confused about how Damian pulled off their secret move. Back in the present, Ted collapses, clutching his chest. Anderson stares in shock. A moment later, trembling and too freaked out to look up, he bows to Damian, apologizing for messing up the Haxan name. He offers up a pile of cash, asking if it'll make things right. Damian says he just wanted an apology, but he'll take the cash too. He calls for Victor to grab the money. Victor jumps into action, still trying to wrap his head around what he just saw and wondering how Damian got such insane skills. As they leave, Anderson and the two bouncers bow nervously, wishing them a safe trip back. Victor can't believe the cash in front of him. Anderson mumbles about getting it all back and talks about having a chat with the Black Snake boss. But suddenly, Damian stops and says he forgot something. In one smooth move, he slashes past Anderson's ear and chops it off. Leaning in closer, he warns Anderson that if the Black Snake ever messes with his family, he won't let it slide. Damian just walks away. He knows this doesn't erase his past mistakes, but in this new life, he's determined to protect his family. He and Victor head home. As the sun sets, the scene shifts to the Lion Bloom March, where a guy stands in front of a mirror, asking his brother if he's heard that saying about how pain always follows love. His brother scoffs and mutters, "What a freak." Back at the Haxon estate, Damian stretches and comments that it's been ages since he got a decent night's sleep. Victor, worried about the chaos that went down. Damian reassures him that it all worked out in the end. Sure, things got a little crazy, but soon enough, the rumors will fly about someone messing with the Haxon family and suffering the consequences. That should help clean up their image and maybe even change how people view the so-called useless eldest son. Victor is taken aback by how aware Damian is, but he can't shake off the dread about the Black Snake. Not only did Damian face off against their members, but he also took on an apprentice knight they hired. Damian shrugs it off, saying that no matter how bold they get, they won't mess with his family, and if they try, he'll be ready to step in. Victor nods, but still can't help but wonder about Damian's sword skills. Damian just brushes it off, saying he trained here and there. Out of nowhere, Paul bursts down the hall, yelling for Damian and panicking about where he's been and thinking he stirred up more trouble. Damian tells him to chill. He's already sorted out his mess, nodding at Victor, who drops a heavy bag of cash on the floor. Paul and Marilda stare at it, totally stunned. Then Victor pulls out a land deed and adds it to the pile. Damian explains he went back to the tavern where he got kicked out and cleared things up, and the owner gave him cash and land to apologize. Damian suggests Paul can ask Victor if he still has doubts, giving a wink while Victor awkwardly nods in agreement. Paul still looks skeptical, but Marilda believes him. While she praises Damian, Victor mutters under his breath that Damian might just be a compulsive liar. Later on, Damian leans against a tree, panting. He hasn't even done much but is already out of breath. His body feels weak and slow, and he knows he's got a long way to go. Still grinning, he pulls out a small vial. Flashing back, he recalls asking what it was. Anderson told him it was a tonic from the Alchemy Academy to boost stamina and energy. He remembers the academy well. Their tonics are worth more than gems. Feeling lucky, he gulps it down and lets out a satisfied sigh. Then it hits him. Suddenly overwhelmed by the rush, he accidentally crushes the empty vial. He mutters that this stuff hits differently. He realizes that if he wants to get strong fast, he needs to build up his stamina first. He has to get back to his former strength before the Archlich raises his undead army again. That future war is coming, and he has to stop it before it begins, before it takes everything from him again. The scene shifts to a tall tower right in the heart of the city, which is where the Black Snake gang hides out in land work. Inside, a scruffy guy is complaining that Ted is pretty much worthless now. He used to be their top fighter, and it really blows. Ted is just lying on the floor, barely hanging on. Some of the guys wonder if they should help him out, but the big guy, Cedric Walker, who runs the Black Snake, just tells them to toss Ted out. The goons aren't so sure and ask if that's really what they should do. Cedric just shrugs and says, anyone can be bought if you throw enough cash at them. Out of nowhere, Ted groans and tries to get up, surprising Cedric. With a smirk, Cedric jokes that maybe he'll think about hiring Ted again if he gets some help. But Ted, fed up with Cedric's shit, grabs his sword. He charges at Cedric, ready to swing, but just as he's about to hit, his body locks up. Something grabs his leg and a weird purple energy crawls up his arm, pulling the sword right out of his hand. Then a voice asks if Ted could be their first target. Ted pleads with them to stop, but the aura gets tighter. He's pulled into a magic circle where the enchantment intensifies, and minor demons show up along with a giant eye below him. One of the creatures drools on his shoulder. The saliva melts through his flesh. Ted screams for mercy, but they swarm him and rip him apart. All that remains is his severed leg in a pool of blood. Cedric makes a face, calling it gross. The mage who did the ritual checks in, asking if he's satisfied. Cedric nods and says he is, but next time he wants it to be cleaner. The mage then brings up what's next. He just wants whoever did it to feel some pain. The mage smirks, takes the payment up front, and tells Cedric to leave it to him. After a tough training session, our guy is still grinding it out, pumping out heavy squats to build some muscle and stamina. It's been going well, but the last few days have felt way too chill. Just as he reaches for his water bottle, he spots two assassins hiding nearby and takes off at crazy speed. But surprise, surprise, he ends up crashing into Abel, his nerdy little brother. He quickly lets go, and Abel hits the ground, stunned by how strong Damian is. Damian quickly says sorry and offers his hand, explaining he didn't mean to go that hard on him, but Abel just shrugs him off. He mentions the bar incident and how the owner apologized. It sounds impossible unless he had someone like Agent 47 in his corner. But even with Damian being honest, Abel's not convinced. Damian totally understands where he's coming from. He ruffles Abel's hair, thinking his brother's got a good heart. That's why he stays relaxed and just says there's nothing to stress about anymore. Their convo gets interrupted when Victor bursts in. Both brothers snap to attention and rush into the house, kicking the door open to find their parents face to face with this guy they kinda recognize. It's the same dude who claimed he was on some kind of love quest. When he spots Damian, he grins and says he just wants to chat about the banquet. This guy is Erwin Lion Bloom, the weaker, evil version of Erwin from Attack on Titan. To really get what's going on, we gotta rewind a bit. At the banquet, Damian and Erwin had a big showdown. Damian was all fired up while Erwin was playing it cool, poking at him more, bringing up how Erwin dissed his sister and threw shade at him. Then he got right in Damian's face, tossing out insults and claiming that even if he did talk trash, there was nothing Damian could do about it. That one hit hard. In a split second, Damian messed up. He threw a punch. It felt good, even if it wasn't the smartest move. After taking a hit, the noble just grinned like it was all part of the plan. Looking back now, Damian realizes that Erwin let the punch land on purpose. The guy is slick enough to dodge punches and just about skilled enough to be a knight. Turns out that little slimeball was just biding his time. During a family meeting, he boldly tells Damian's folks that he's into their daughter, Louise. At first, the Viscount is confused about what he's getting at, until Erwin pops the question and proposes. The Haxon family is shaken up by the news. Damian bites his tongue, knowing this is exactly how it went down in his past life. But his dad shoots him down without thinking twice. Erwin gets even more irritated when he finds out Louise is already engaged. Then there's the issue of him being humiliated in public. Erwin warns the Haxon family that they won't be able to deal with the fallout if they turn down his proposal. It's a tough call for the Viscount, knowing how powerful the Lion Bloom family is, but deep down, he knows how shady Erwin really is, and his instincts won't let his daughter get hurt like that. Louise suddenly steps up and offers to marry Erwin. Watching his daughter do this makes the Viscount break down, and he tries to tell her they'll figure something else out. Abel is furious, arguing that she shouldn't have to pay for Damian's mistakes. Damian feels guilty too, but Louise just keeps smiling and says she'll go with Erwin. The whole thing hits the protagonist hard, reminding him of how his past mistakes hurt his sister. Now that things are leaning in his favor, as he gets ready to leave, he mentions that a formal request will be sent to work out the details. But just then, the devil himself shows up, staring daggers at Erwin. Anyone with a sister would understand the look on our guy's face after everything that went down. Erwin mocks Damian and calls him his brother-in-law. Louise can't believe her brother is standing up for her. He mutters something that the arrogant blonde noble doesn't even get. What he gets instead is a Mike Tyson uppercut that sends him flying. Damian realizes he messed up by taking the bait, but there's no way he's just gonna sit back and watch his family get ripped apart. The noble crashes down, and it's clear our guy isn't going to let Erwin have his way. To really understand why Damian hates Erwin so much, we need to go back to the start. After being sold to the Lion Bloom family, he didn't see his sister for ages. When he found out they were coming to visit, he was super hyped and ran over with a big grin. But what he walked into crushed him. His sister was standing there, her hair pulled back like some wild animal. Erwin was dragging her around, fuming because she wouldn't stop whining about her family and even dared to threaten leaving him. To teach her a lesson, he balled up his fist and started hitting her while she screamed in pain. That moment broke Damian. He felt completely helpless to protect her, and it was his own earlier actions that landed her in that situation. From that day on, he was filled with this deep-seated hatred for Erwin Lion Bloom. Fast forward to now, and he just knocked Erwin out with a solid uppercut, leaving everyone in shock. The Lion Bloom guards rushed in after hearing their young master yell, weapons drawn and ready to take down whoever did this. Damian looks around and realizes those guards are his own escorts. But Erwin, still smirking like he's invincible, gets back up. Tired of being pushed around, he grabs his sword while the Haxon family watches in horror. Finally showing his true colors, he pulls out his blade and taunts Damian, asking if his brother-in-law wants a quick death. To avoid the situation getting out of hand, Damian's guards rush in to handle it and protect his name. But Erwin isn't having it this time. He orders them to stand down. When one guard hesitates, Erwin punches him into the wall. He might look weak, but he's close to night level and coldly warns them again. His glare sends shivers down spines. Abel and Louise are worried about their brother. Erwin steps up, ready to finish this off, thinking the Haxon family has made everything worse. Louise senses something's off and tries to step in, but Damian stops her this time because he won't let her take the fall again. With a look that says he's got things under control, he steps up for a one-on-one duel. This catches Erwin off guard. Damian lays down the rules. If he loses, he'll do whatever Erwin says. But if he wins, then all this will be forgotten. Erwin hesitates because Louise already gave him the go-ahead. He's getting what he wanted, but Damian doesn't back down. He calls Erwin a coward for trying to dodge the fight, hitting right at his pride. Erwin agrees to the duel, thinking he'll wipe the floor with Damian and finally take his sister for good. In the next moment, Damian's mom wants to jump in, but the Viscount holds her back. They're confident in their son, believing he has a plan, and now all they can do is trust him. Abel knows just how big of a mess they're in. When Erwin gets ready to throw down, he's totally thrown for a loop when he sees Damian isn't even holding a sword. But Damian coolly tells him he's got this. Then, just to mess with Erwin's head, he whips out a fork. Yep, a fork. Definitely not what you'd expect against someone with Erwin's reputation. Erwin can't believe it and bursts out laughing, thinking Damian has completely lost it. Feeling cocky, he dives in to end it quick. But his first attack goes wide because Damian dodges without breaking a sweat. Erwin starts throwing down some serious moves with his fierce roaring lion sword technique, which is basically his version of a Susanoo. But it's like hitting a brick wall. Damian stands firm, blocking every hit. Even the guards around are left in disbelief, trying to figure out if Damian is just messing around or actually that strong. From Erwin's point of view, Damian dodged every single shot right from the get-go. Not one hit landed. Damian is feeling pretty good knowing his training paid off. He's even starting to pick up the Lion Bloom sword style. The cool thing is that in the original timeline, Damian went head-to-head with Michael Lion Bloom, the big shot of the Lion Bloom family. Compared to him, Erwin is a total joke. Erwin, getting super frustrated, starts unleashing waves of aura. Erwin charges in full blast, trying to land a killer shot. In that split second, Damian decides to go for the Sword Saint technique, but everything unravels for Erwin when Damian blocks his sword and pushes it back with a fork. He can't believe his eyes. Before he even knows what's happening, Damian pulls off his secret move, the Thunder Shadow Revelations. In an instant, the fork sends Erwin's sword flying. Without missing a beat, Damian finishes things by stabbing that smug noble right in the neck with the fork. Abel and Louise can't believe their eyes, and their parents look just as stunned. Erwin's dad yells his name, but instead of staying put, Erwin freaks out and starts crawling away, even though it's just a fork poking him. Damian is thinking that punishing Erwin over and over isn't enough for what he did. He declares that he thinks they've found a winner and asks if anyone has a problem with that. Meanwhile, the whole Haxon family is sitting down for a meal, and our guy is really enjoying himself. He mentions that he's heading out for training in the morning. As he leaves, everyone keeps eating. Marilda glances over at Osborne, asking if he's not going to ask about what happened yesterday. Abel is still pretty shaken up from what went down, and his family can tell. Osborne thinks it's best to give him some space, trusting that he'll open up when he's ready. Marilda sweetly calls him honey, and although he's curious, he feels it's better not to push for details. He thinks our guy is his son, but there's just something about him that feels a little off. As our guy is tying a sandbag around his leg for some endurance training, Louise calls out to him, looking a bit relieved that he's still around. She nervously brings up what happened yesterday, and he considers apologizing. Lowering his head, he admits that he acted a bit recklessly. Louise puts her hand on his shoulder, reassuring him that it's not as bad as he thinks. She really appreciates his support and admits she was pretty scared. When she followed Erwin, her gut was telling her something different, pushing back against her instincts. With a little shake in her hand, she thanks him, letting him know he really came through for her. She feels bad about the whole situation, but is also glad about his bravery. She wants to show her gratitude and says, "Thanks, Damian." He smiles back, saying he should be the one thanking her for everything she's done. But then she stops him and hands him a sword, explaining that it was her dad's favorite, and he had asked her to give it to him for training. Damian is taken aback, but Louise tells him their dad isn't great at showing his feelings. He loves them, though. Damian thinks back to his father's anger, recalling how he once told him not about to use a fork as a sword. Meanwhile, his dad is sniffling, wondering what that little breeze was. As night falls, a weird, dark vibe starts creeping closer to their house, while the guard, getting sleepy, lets out a big yawn. Suddenly, the dark aura wraps around them and begins pulling them away. As the gate swings open, a cloaked guy steps out from the dark aura and walks into the house, wandering around while everyone else is asleep. He heads toward one of the doors, and inside, Louise is sound asleep. The guy moves closer, admiring her beauty. He thinks he's there to do a favor for Black Snake, but feels a bit lucky too. Just as he's about to get closer to Louise, Damian calls out to him from the entrance of the room, asking what he's doing there. Without missing a beat, he starts charging up his power in his fist for an attack, but our guy dodges it like a champ, barely getting a scratch. The mage, totally taken aback, demands to know who our guy is. But honestly, it's our guy who's curious about that. The mage starts to wonder if he's up against Damian. Just then, someone starts yelling about a commotion in the Louise room. The mage freaks out, worried the servants might wake up from the blast. So he morphs into this dark aura and scrambles out the window. Our guy tries to stop him, but it's too late. He's already gone. He can't believe the mage slipped away. He looks around and sees the dark energy still hanging in the air. The next morning, some servants are panicking because their horse is dead right in front of them, and they know the Viscount is going to lose it. It's a total mess since the horse seemed fine just yesterday. Then, our guy surprising pops in and admits he had a bad feeling about it. He reassures them not to worry since he's just checking things out and asks to borrow the room for a bit. He puts a hand on the dead horse, trying to track down where that dark energy he noticed last night leads. No doubt about it. This energy is dark mana, meaning whoever did this is a dark mage. Looks like his family hasn't caught on yet, but there's no need to freak them out. The trail of dark energy starts at the boy's house and eventually leads to a cave pretty far off. That cave is actually in the forest where the mage usually hangs out. He thinks the boss of the Black Snake is pretty dumb for giving the mage everything he wanted, which he had originally called a curse, just a cover. Suddenly, someone shows up in the cave, and the mage is thrown off by a strange smell. It's our guy who tells him that old men shouldn't be left alone for too long. Our guy just followed the stench he left behind. The mage remembers hearing rumors about our guy going up against the Black Snake. Our boy realizes that the mage is the one the Black Snake hired to stir up trouble for his family, which is pretty pathetic considering how the mage is now facing his own doom. Hearing this, the mage gets on high alert. Furious, he starts launching a bunch of attacks, but our guy dodges every single one, then strikes back hard, taking the mage down with some brutal sword strikes. The mage feels himself fading, but somehow keeps grinning, even while split in half, which makes our guy wonder if he's pulling off some kind of magic trick he's seen before at a mansion. He's impressed this guy is holding up so well for someone with such a lame job. But the mage confidently claims that hit won't faze him. Our guy responds, saying he'll just keep chopping him down until there's nothing left. With that, he goes all out, striking the liquid mage dozens of times in no time flat. Even in pieces, the mage thinks it's not bad, realizing that's why our guy's name is making waves. He says that the moment he stepped in here on his own, he was already dead. Then he grabs our guy's arm from behind, totally catching him off guard. The mage is in this wicked, monstrous form made of dark energy, and he starts casting spells left and right to counter. Our guy realizes this could get really dangerous, and the mage declares he's going to take down the ever-crossing Yulan officer. With that, he unleashes all his dark energy on our guy, saying his whole body is about to rot and die. In no time, this guy had our dude completely wrapped up in his dark energy. He saw him as a cocky threat who really blew his own chances. Cedric even said that the more damage he did, the more he'd gain from it, so he thought he was killing it. Now that he felt untouchable, he set his sights on that woman he spotted yesterday. But our guy threw him a curveball by casually mentioning some kind of decomposing curse, which really caught the mage off guard. He couldn't figure out why our guy was still unaffected while he was all free from that energy. When he asked how our guy knew so much about dark energy, the mage was completely stunned. He couldn't believe it either. He looked at his hand, which had developed a weird symbol, and he couldn't wrap his head around how he still had any power left. Thinking back on his past life, Dorgo stood before the authority known as the power of God. When he glanced back, he saw his death knight, Damian, kneeling in front of him. He was dead set on becoming the ultimate weapon himself. So he made a cut on his hand and decided to share some of that power with Damian to transform him into the ultimate weapon. Raising his hand, a giant burst of energy flowed down, and Dorgo channeled it, casting a wild spell packed with insane power. When that energy hit him, he screamed in pain. But once things settled, he realized something incredible. He finally unlocked the authority of God. At that moment, Damian started to feel the force of greed returning. It was the same power he had when he was a Death Knight. He thought he'd lost it, but here it was again, just like that. The mage tried to take advantage and attacked, but Damian dodged like it was nothing. When the mage asked how he survived the spell, Damian shot back with a question of his own, suggesting everyone has a secret weapon or two, like having plot armor. He remembered the mage mentioning being an officer of Yulan, a group that dealt with assassinations using dark magic. Hearing that, a bracelet on his wrist started glowing brightly and released a massive wave of green energy. This bracelet was boosting his power, packed with dark mana. With that artifact, he felt significantly stronger and more monstrous. Then, he unleashed a wild attack. He poured all his mana into a direct assault on our guy, and you could see the impact on the cave. He thought it was finally over as our guy got hit with flames that burned endlessly, even beyond death. But when the fire died down, he confidently said the mage totally misunderstood everything, which freaked the mage out. Our guy then revealed that the power of greed doesn't erase magic, that hellfire couldn't even touch him and just stopped a few meters away. He coolly explained that it absorbed all the dark mana instead, leaving the mage completely stunned and questioning how someone like him could wield such terrifying power. With that, our guy got ready to strike, remarking that it was none of the mage's business, and it really irked him that he had to use power given to him by someone he hated the most. He knew he had to pull out his Death Knight moves to take down the guy in front of him. He freaked out and pleaded with our guy to wait, but without any hesitation, our guy just raised his sword and went for it, aiming a soul-severing slash right at the mage's head. The hit was so intense that the mage got sliced right in two, and even the cave behind him was crumbling apart. Our guy finished him off, looking icy while the whole place came crashing down. As the dust settles, the mage is still alive but coughing hard. Damian tells him he'll ease the pain if he spills where the black snakes are hiding. Then we're off to the merchant city, where he's headed to do some land work, and Victor asks what's going on. Damian just says if he's tagging along, he needs to keep it low-key. Victor checks out the creepy book Damian's reading, which happens to be a dark magic grimoire he snagged after taking out a dark mage. Suddenly, he sniffs something weird and wonders about it. As they look around, still puzzled, they finally hit their destination. Damian hands Victor a little bag and says there's something he needs him to do. When Victor opens the box, he freezes at the sight of the mage's head inside. Panic hits, but our guy tries to keep it cool with everyone watching. He promises to explain later, but insists he has something crucial for him first. He needs Victor to deliver some stuff to a specific place. Victor is still freaking out. Soon, Damian finds himself next to a tall building with 2 guards hanging around. He realizes these wannabe thugs have set up shop right in the middle of the city, which makes the guards curious about who he really is. So he introduces himself as Damian Haxon from Haxon's Viscounty. The guards start laughing at him, but one of them snaps to it, realizing he's the guy their boss has been searching for. Damian is surprised they know him since he's got some business with their boss. They tell him to head inside. One guard reloads his gun and fires a shot into the air, but it ends up being a flare. He says it's a welcome gift for Damian. Before he knows it, our guy is surrounded by a bunch of minions ready to rumble. He just smirks and warns them they're gonna regret this. Meanwhile, Landworks governor, Sebastian, is living it up with some girls and loads of good food. His night is pretty hammered too. Cedric is around, watching the scene go down and thinking it's a real privilege. But the governor is all about the merchants and doesn't mind the black snakes taking over. He gives the green light for them to run the red light district, and is totally fine with it. When someone brings up the protests, he confidently says he can crush them any time. The knight jumps in, wishing he could pitch in as well. Cedric responds, saying keeping everything in check isn't easy, and throws some compliments at the knight, boosting his ego. Meanwhile, the governor, still enjoying the girls around him, tells Cedric to reach out if they need help. Cedric thinks he won't have to deal with these losers much longer because he plans to take over the whole city, and soon they'll be bowing to him. One of his minions speaks up, saying he has news to share, and when asked, he gets ready to spill it. As Cedric heads out, the minion whispers something that totally freaks him out, making him shout about Damian. He's furious, but has to admit it's kind of clever since he warned his crew ahead of time. He brushes off the minion, convinced our guy just came here to meet his end. Meanwhile, before getting into the fight, Damian drinks a potion that boosts his stamina and strength. Now he looks seriously badass and is ready to go on a wild slashing spree. He figures things usually don't go how people expect. Back in town, some dark mages are lurking around, and one of them thinks someone owes him a favor, so he tells everyone not to stress. Cedric is shocked, sensing something is off. Meanwhile, our guy wipes out all his minions without breaking a sweat. The boss scratches his head, wondering if he really pulled this off alone. With all these thoughts swirling, he rushes back, realizing he needs backup. Our guy is taken aback when more minions show up, making him wonder if their gear is magical. The minions get hyped and start blasting fireballs right at him, but he's ready to defend himself. He decides to hit them with his secret move, Countless Thunder Shadow Revelation. With a swing of his sword, he sends the fireballs right back at the minions, and when they strike, it's like a single hit takes them all out. He thinks he might be done with them, but now he wants to figure out who the Black Snake boss really is. Suddenly, he barely dodges a punch that comes out of nowhere. Standing firm, he notices the guy has this intense vibe that's almost prickling his skin. The dude says he was wondering who stirred up all this trouble, and to him, our guy just looks like some overconfident punk. That's when he realizes this guy is probably an official knight. In no time, our guy is surrounded by soldiers who are supposed to keep the peace in the city. The governor pipes up, shouting about how dare he create such chaos right in the middle of everything. He says our guy is going to be punished, which makes him wonder what that even means and why. The governor, getting angrier, questions what kind of nonsense that is. Cedric starts to realize that no matter how tough our guy is, he can't really touch anyone under the governor's protection. Damian just motions for Cedric to kick things off. He figures Cedric has some loyalty issues and starts poking fun at the governor, calling him ridiculous for thinking that guy is a businessman. The governor fires back, saying if he begs for forgiveness now, he might reconsider. But Damian insists he hasn't done anything wrong. Feeling cornered, the governor calls in Robert, who leaps in with his axe ready to go. Robert introduces himself as the city's guardian knight and tells Damian to drop his weapon and submit to arrest. But Damian's just super confident. Robert laughs and swings wildly at him, calling him a fool. Damian barely dodges it. Realizing taking on Robert right now is a bad idea, he decides to hang tight until the moment is right. When Robert tries to throw a punch, Damian blocks it, but the force still sends him flying. He can't help but wonder where she's at, and Robert doesn't hold back. He jumps in, asking where she's looking. Just when things heat up, someone else cuts in. Robert's axe swings down, and everyone gasps as it slices through the air. Robert stops, trying to figure out who she is before pulling his axe back. Suddenly, a stunning paladin steps into the scene. She calls out to Damian as young master, and he's curious about why she's late. Then Victor barges in, all pumped up, claiming he made it too. Cedric starts to think the paladin is nearby, which means the church might be getting involved. He wonders if they've caught wind of his deal with the dark mages. Our dude tells Victor he's been waiting way too long for him, but at least it looks like he pulled off what he asked for. Victor's pretty stoked that he can handle orders at least. A few hours earlier, Victor rolls up at the church, and this hot chick turns around to check him out. She asks if this is the Holy Church branch, and he says it is, telling her to listen up. He mentions his lord needs him to get something to the church ASAP, something about proof of someone teaming up with the dark mages. The hot chick wants to see it, and when she checks the book, she confirms it's definitely dark magic. Then she sees the symbol, grabs the bag from Victor, and pulls out the head of the mage. That's when she realizes she's finally found one of the leaders of Yulan, Ajito. She takes off her veil, showing off some cool cocoa melon artwork, and asks where the person is who told her to expect this. Then she turns to our guy and asks if he's Damian, and he confirms it. She's got the proof she needs, and now the church is ready to step in. Cedric and the governor are starting to freak out since the Holy Church is in the mix. The paladin girl praises our guy, realizing everything is going just as she thought. The Holy Church is all about serving God and being generous to regular folks, but when it comes to heretics and demons, they won't hold back. They're kind of fanatics. The church's enforcers are the paladins, and now they're backing Damian. The paladin girl calls out to the citizens and soldiers, revealing they got a tip about someone who had a run-in with a dark mage. The crowd can't help but wonder how anyone could do business with those shady guys. The chick paladin jumps in, saying if they dig into this, the church will take over the city. The governor starts to panic, asking what she means, since the land is supposed to govern itself. But she insists that the church's authority is way stronger than the kingdom's. Fired up, she calls him and his knight prime suspects, totally catching them off guard. She points to Cedric, claiming he's been colluding with the dark mage. She adds that just protecting him looks super sketchy. The governor barks at the boss, demanding to know if it's true. The paladin then reveals she has proof, pulling out a notebook filled with Cedric's purchases for the dark mage. He's clenching his teeth in anger over the dark mage keeping tabs on him. He swears it's a misunderstanding and that he has nothing to do with the dark mage, but the determined paladin says they'll get to the bottom of it. She tells her crew to take him away and the church's enforcers escort him off. Our guy just stands there quietly, which is really ticking off the governor, who thinks he's been scheming all along. Cedric yells at Robert, warning him that if he surrenders, they'll totally set him up. He's shouting non-stop, which makes Robert pause for a moment. Then he decides to go all out, thinking that being taken like this means certain doom. He grabs his axe and charges straight at the hot paladin, which makes Cedric really happy. He swings his axe, but she dodges and lands a punch so hard it nearly goes through him. Everyone's jaws drop. That punch goes right through him, and she yanks her arm back out, leading to Robert's immediate downfall. The hot paladin then declares that anyone who defies God's will face punishment. Meanwhile, Governor Sebastian is freaking out, calling them fools as the church guards drag him away. On the ground, Cedric can't believe a little punk like Damian put him in this spot. Eventually, Damian admits everything worked out because of Victor's help. He thought the paladin would be strong, but she's way stronger than he anticipated. From the sacred power radiating off her, he suspects she might be an apprentice of the famous Azure Flame, the strongest person in the church, known for taking down lots of heretics. Suddenly, the paladin calls out to Damian and walks over. She thanks him for taking down an officer of Yulan, but Damian just says he did what anyone would do. Because of his help, she reassures him he won't be charged with anything related to this case. She then mentions they'll pay him the bounty on Agito's head soon. Surprised, Damian asks about the bounty and how much it is. When he finds out it's 1,000 gold, Victor's jaw drops, and Damian thinks about how that's enough to buy a small castle. But Damian has other plans and asks the paladin if he can trade something else with the church. Damian tells her he'd like to learn one of the mana cultivation techniques from the church. She finds that strange, since she knows he's strong enough to take down the Black Snake on his own. Damian realizes he got lucky beating him thanks to the power of authority. He knows to take down tougher foes in the future, he'll need to master more advanced mana techniques. He explains to the paladin that he's only learned basic-level techniques and wants to move on to something more advanced. The paladin is surprised because she can sense a powerful aura coming from him. After thinking it over, the paladin considers his eagerness and offers a different idea. She suggests he might want to become a paladin himself. The way she asks is so elegant, it's like she's glowing, but Damian isn't impressed. After a bit of hesitation, he outright tells her he's not interested, and she collapses in despair. She then asks why he isn't keen. Victor starts to panic, realizing they might be in trouble. Annoyed, the paladin brings up how hard it is to earn that position, but Damian doesn't seem to care. He knows he's never had any faith and doesn't want to be a puppet for the church. Instead of saying all that, he tells her he's not worthy of God's love yet. Victor just looks at him, totally confused about what his deal is. After a moment, our guy beams and says he just wants to travel the world and follow the divine as a humble devotee. Then the paladin jumps in and declares his words to be pure gold. She introduces herself as Agnes, the first apprentice of the Azure Flame. Damian can't help but think it's pretty cool to meet the first one accepted by Azure Flame, so he tells her it's an honor. Then he asks if he can wrap up his business here, and Agnes gives him the green light, even though she's not sure what he means. Damian strides over to Cedric, who's still on the ground. Cedric yells at him, calling him the son of a B-word. Before he can finish that sentence, our boy kicks him hard in the stomach, making him cough like crazy. As Cedric's wheezing, Damian tells him his belly's so big it's like hitting a cushion. Damian plants a foot right in his face, knocking him backwards until his head hits the ground. Cedric crashes onto his back while Agnes and Victor watch, totally shocked. After that, Damian feels a rush of satisfaction. Eventually, Victor asks if all the trouble is finally over, and Damian proudly says it is. Over at the home of the Marquis of the Lion Bloom family, Erwin, the Marquis of the Apple Kingdom, Holland barges in. He finds his son, Erwin, all curled up under the sheets. Annoyed, Holland grabs Erwin and demands to know what's going on. Erwin stutters but manages to explain that some jerk tried to kill him. He turns to the guard nearby and asks who would do such a thing. The guard hesitates but finally spills that Damian from House Haxon is the culprit. Holland is fuming. He smashes a vase nearby, totally incredulous that a lowly Haxon would mess with his son. He's convinced the kid must have pulled some sneaky trick, so he orders the guards to head to Haxon Estate right away, telling them to drag Damian over like a dog. Shortly after, Agnes and some of her crew head over to the Haxon Estate to meet Viscount Haxon. The Viscount and his wife welcome them, but it's clear he's already annoyed that his brat of a son brought a fanatic into their home, and Agnes explains they've decided to stick around to investigate the heretic. However, the Viscount tries to say their home is pretty small, but before he can finish, Agnes hands him a bag of gold as a thank you. Instantly, he switches gears and tells them to make themselves at home. Later, Agnes mentions that the investigation is really important and asks if she can make another request. Surprised, Damian asks what it is, and Agnes confesses it's about him. This catches the Viscount and his wife off guard. A moment later, Agnes hands him the mana cultivation manuals he asked for. The sword manual is called Destructive Sword Technique, and the other one is the Destructive Energy Technique. And her master felt Damian is just the kind of chosen one the church needs. Excitedly, she grabs his hand and asks if he would reconsider becoming a paladin. Damian pulls his hand back and apologizes. Agnes says she understands and won't push him further, but she adds that he shouldn't hesitate to come find her if he ever changes his mind. As she walks away, Damian realizes Agnes is really a fanatic because of her obsession. Meanwhile, two paladins from the church are checking out the cave where Ajito was killed. One of them calls to his partner, wondering if he doesn't find things a bit weird. When asked what he means, he explains that Ajito was a high-ranking member of Yulan who has dodged the church multiple times. Even though Ajito was part of the curse school, which isn't great in combat, it still doesn't make sense that such a powerful dark mage would fall to a rural noble. The other guy admits he had the same thoughts. While they're still chatting, Agnes sneaks up from behind and tells them they can trust Damian Haxon. She assures them that Damian didn't lie. Agnes points out that they already heard how he did it. They try to remember what she means, and they recall Damian saying he just dodged and chopped off Ajito's head. Surprised, the curious paladin asks Agnes if she really thinks he just dodged and killed Ajito, and she nods. She explains that she also questioned Damian's skill when she saw Ajito's severed head, so she held back while he faced Robert and the others, opting not to intervene. Apparently, she watched him fight off a bunch of guys without taking a scratch, and what shocked her the most was when he managed to deflect a fireball, a magical spell, with his sword. The paladins are pretty taken aback, and one of them, curious as ever, wonders if that's really possible. Agnes nods and says it definitely is, especially since she's heard that people who hit the Swordmaster level can block all sorts of attacks, even magic. She makes it clear she's not claiming he's a Swordmaster, but she can see his skills are something special. She also admits she wanted to bring Damian along to meet her master because she thinks he could be a huge help to the church. So, she tells the guys to put their doubts aside and keep on with their investigation. Meanwhile, the crew sent by Marquis Holland finally shows up at the Haxon estate. One of them, Olpus, an apprentice knight from the House Lion Bloom, is glad they've arrived. Another apprentice, Lavender, can't stand the smell of cow dung, but Olpus tells him he better get used to it. As they chat, their leader, Garrick, tells them to hush up. Garrick is the official knight of the Lion Bloom family. A moment later, Garrick points at the building and asks if that's the Haxon estate. Olpus confirms it. Then Garrick asks what their mission from the Marquis is, and Olpus explains they're supposed to arrest Damian Haxon. Garrick declares that catching the kid will be a piece of cake. Just then, Garrick spots an old man walking by and calls out to him. When the man asks who they are, Garrick asks if he lives at the Viscount Haxon's estate. As Garrick pulls out his sword, the old man replies that he does live there and wants to know what's going on. With one swift move, Garrick sends the old man's head rolling. Annoyed, Garrick wonders how a mere resident would dare not to bow down after seeing the crest of the House Lion bloom. The knights behind are shocked, but they don't say a word. Eventually, Garrick turns to the apprentice knight. He proposes that they enter the estate and then slaughter everyone they see. As they charge into the estate, the first person they run into is a frantic Victor, who was busy sweeping. Agnes and her crew finally come out of the cave after checking it out. Out of nowhere, they notice something weird and spot Damian over on a nearby rock. One of the guys admits he's confused, but thinks it's pretty amazing. Agnes is surprised too and remembers that the destructive energy technique she gave Damian is meant to help absorb surrounding mana once you really master it. Still, she doesn't believe he could have gotten that far in just a few hours. Eventually, Damian wraps up his training and goes back to normal. He sees Agnes and one of the paladins, so he walks over and asks if they finished checking things out. Agnes tells him they did and mentions that it looks like he made some progress. Damian brushes it off as just a little bit and realizes Agnes wasn't kidding about the difficulty of the book she gave him. Since he was a swordmaster in his past life, he doesn't really need sword techniques, but that cultivation method is super handy for him. When things get a little too romantic for Damian's taste, he tries to brush it off. Just then, Damian senses some serious bloodlust nearby, but he tells her he has to bounce because he's got urgent stuff to handle. He tells her to head back when she's ready and takes off at superhuman speed. One of the paladins mentions how fast he is. She realizes he must have insane precision to move that quickly. Meanwhile, Lavender punches Victor in the gut, dropping him to the ground. After that, she stomps on his back for not doing what she says. Victor takes the hits but refuses to cooperate because he knows they want to hurt Damian. At the same time, a maid rushes to signal the Viscount, and he bolts out to confront the knights. The Viscount orders them to stop right away and checks on Victor, holding his head and demanding to know what the heck is going on. When he asks why a knight would attack a regular civilian, Garrick shoots back that this is nothing compared to what his estate did to House Lionbloom. He straight up tells Viscount Paul Haxon to hand over Damian Haxon. Garrick warns him to do it quietly so nothing happens to his land. The Viscount realizes he might see some kind of payback from Lionbloom, but he didn't expect it to be this brutal. He can tell Garrick is lying because he knows they'll just torch the place if he gives up his son. Frustrated, the Viscount insists he'll never turn over his kid. Curious, Garrick asks if he's sure he won't regret that decision, but the Viscount stands his ground. Garrick orders his knights to start destroying everything until Damian shows up. Shocked, the Viscount tells them to stop immediately. Just as he's talking, Damian rolls up and asks if these guys have lost their minds. With a serious vibe, Damian walks towards them, and they all turn, surprised. Garrick didn't even notice the kid arriving, and when Damian gets closer, Lavender asks who he is. Suddenly, the apprentice knights are freaked out because they can't move. Damian ignores them and checks on his father, learning Victor got hurt. He tells the guys they must be lucky because Victor's tough, and if he weren't, he would have been dead from the beating they gave him. Ulpus, stunned, calls Damian a bastard, and Garrick comments that the kid must be crazy to stand up to the Marquis. Yet, he can't help thinking the kid could just be cocky after beating Erwin with some sneaky trick. Garrick quickly tells his knights to break Damian's knees and force him to kneel, so they charge in. As Lavender comes at Damian with his sword, our guy just grabs his hand and pushes it back. He thinks this is actually a great chance to try out the mana he picked up from his destructive energy technique. With one swift move, he breaks Lavender's arm and lands a punch to his chest that sends him flying back, while Ulpus can only watch in shock. Before Ulpus can react, Damian's foot connects with his face, knocking him back and knocking out a few teeth. While both knights are on the ground in pain, Garrick looks a bit surprised. Then, out of nowhere, Victor opens his eyes and calls for the young master. Damian turns to him, asks if he's okay, and Victor just smiles and gives him a thumbs up. That little gesture makes Damian smile, realizing the kid never stops surprising him. Eventually, Garrick hops down from his high horse and admits he's confused about how someone like Damian can be so skilled. Damian tells him it's not his concern, but then Garrick thinks he's figured it out. He He goes on about how everything makes sense now and insists this guy isn't really Damian Haxon. Viscount Paul is completely lost by Garrick's rambling, and Damian feels the same way. Getting annoyed, Garrick accuses Damian of lying, claiming this is a trap by the field dogs to mess with the lion, and he starts pulling out his sword. Damian isn't fazed. He realizes Garrick is even dumber than he thought. Meanwhile, Ulpus is trying to figure out what to do, and decides to play dead for now, to avoid getting involved. As Garrick unsheathes his weapon, he realizes the kid might actually be skilled, but thinks luck is running out for him. With a mana circle around him, he figures he can take Damian out instantly if he steps into range. But as Damian moves forward, Garrick can't believe his attack got blocked and thinks it must have been a fluke, so he goes in for more attacks. But Damian just stands there and blocks them all. With a cocky grin, he tells Garrick he's too slow and decides to hit back. Damian charges forward, slicing Garrick's face with lightning speed. Garrick tries to defend himself, but he ends up getting kicked in the face and sent rolling. Once Garrick is down, Damian looks at him with fierce eyes and tells him that one was for Victor. Annoyed, Garrick gets back up and calls him a bastard. In a fit of rage, he charges at Damian again, but Damian stands his ground. Garrick unleashes a powerful move called the Ultimate Lion's Mighty Sword of Speed, summoning some destructive claws. It's amusing to Damian, who points out that the technique is nothing special despite how flashy it looks. As Garrick closes in, Damian blocks his sword, and the impact blows Garrick's sword to pieces. This opens the door for Damian to stab him in the shoulder and slice off his hand. Garrick screams in agony and collapses. The Viscount looks on in shock, while Victor can't help but cheer because his master has won. Garrick tries to stop the bleeding while Damian's sword hovers close to his face. With sweat pouring down, Garrick admits he doesn't know who Damian really is, but he begs for his life. Damian calls him an idiot. He warns Garrick he should have begged for mercy before messing with his family and making his ugly servant even uglier. Alarmed, Garrick apologizes for his actions. But Damian tells him that he's not the one he should be sorry to, as Victor shows up with a stick in hand, and Viscount Paul stands ready with a sword nearby. After giving Garrick and his knights a little more of a beatdown, Victor asks if he can take another swing at Garrick because he still feels unsatisfied. Before they can make any moves, the Viscount jumps in and tells Damian it's time to stop. Garrick immediately begs for mercy, apologizing for all the disrespect he's shown. The Viscount questions whether he really thinks a simple apology will make up for everything. He points out that if it weren't for his son's strength, Garrick and his crew would have completely wrecked their territory and left him at the mercy of the Marquis family. Garrick goes so far as to headbutt the ground and plead for mercy. After hesitating for a moment, the Viscount glances at Damian. Inside, Damian admits he never planned to kill them. Doing so would ruin his relationship with House Lion. While he's pondering his next move, Agnes walks into the estate and asks what's going on. The moment Damian sees her, he realizes she could help out once again. After filling her in on the situation, Agnes mentions how they managed to take down one of Yulan's executive officers thanks to House Haxon. If they can recognize House Haxon as an ally, that could really help them out. This sounds promising to Damian and the Viscount, though Victor still seems a bit confused. Eventually, Damian gives Agnes his best puppy eyes and asks if she would help them out. She happily agrees, and Damian can't help but smirk inside because getting the church's protection was his goal from the start. Meanwhile, the Viscount and Victor realize Damian just used his charm to win her over. Damian quickly tells Garrick to go report to the Lion that House Haxon is under the church's protection. If they try to mess with them again, they'll have to deal with the church. He tells them to beat it, and all three guys take off running. Victor waves his stick at them, telling them they should consider themselves lucky. Victor is glad they can finally take a breather, but the Viscount says they need to sort out their next steps and hold a family meeting. Shortly after, the meeting kicks off with Agnes hanging out nearby while the family gathers. The Viscount explains they're discussing the feud with House Lionbloom. Before he dives back into it, Abel raises his hand and asks his father why they need to do anything since they've got the church backing them up. Louise quickly jumps in to explain that they can't count on the church to fully step in for them. The Viscount agrees, stating that the church usually doesn't get super involved in noble disputes. He points out that Lion Bloom's power isn't just about their military strength. They could easily take down smaller families like theirs. He thinks their best move is to either offer some kind of payment or seek out protection from a bigger noble family. Agnes then pipes up, suggesting that Sir Damian could become a paladin. That radiant glow returns to her face, but Damian just frowns at her from his seat. He didn't see that coming, and when his family turns to him, he firmly tells them he's not interested. Agnes sinks back into her sadness, and the Viscount decides to let it go since Damian isn't on board with it. Out of nowhere, Abel hits the table in frustration and asks his dad why he's so quick to accept that, especially since Damian could fix everything by just becoming a paladin. He pushes his dad to tell Damian to step up and become a paladin, even though deep down, their dad reminds him that they have a guest and asks him nicely to sit down. Eventually, the Viscount concedes that Abel's right about Damian stirring the pot with the Lion Blooms. He believes Damian acted to protect Louise from the Marquis' second son since he feels helpless as a father. Then, the Viscount stands up, his eyes watery, and tells Damian that he defended their family's honor and paid them back properly. Damian looks up, surprised that his dad feels this way. He replies that he felt he had to do it, while Abel just snickers in the background. Just then, a butler walks in, saying someone from House Gold Pixie has arrived, which piques the Viscount's interest about what business the Duke has with them. The butler starts stumbling over his words, explaining that young Master Damian borrowed money with the family's wheat fields as collateral, and the repayment period is up. Damian realizes he's in hot water and glances at his dad. Before he can say a word, his father yanks him up by his shirt. Not long after, Damian heads out to meet their guest. The guy greets him, but Damian realizes he kinda remembers him. The man, Olin Demishi, is the one running the finances for the West Branch of the Dash and Cash operation. He's here to collect repayment since today is the day they agreed on. Damian remembers how Olin sweet-talked him into using his family's land as collateral to get more cash. He asks how much he owes, and Olin tells him it's 200 gold, but with interest, it's bloomed to 300. Damian's jaw almost hits the floor, and when he asks if that's right, Olin offers to show him the contract. He knows his family doesn't have that kind of cash lying around, and without it, they could be tossed out on the street. Olin reminds him that if he can't repay today, the land will belong to Dash and Cash. Damian can't believe it, since Olin had said it was just a formality. Olin agrees, but claims Duke Goldpixie ordered them to collect all outstanding debts. Olin urges him to fetch the cash, and with a grin, asks if he doesn't have it. Eventually, Damian admits he didn't manage to get the money together, which makes Olin smile even wider. Olin takes a seat, saying he shouldn't have borrowed the cash in the first place, and then signals his muscle-bound buddies to handle things their way. They close in on Damian, while Olin revels in knowing the kid wouldn't have the money. It's not just about the cash for him. He gets a kick out of roughing people up. He imagines the look on Damian's face and can barely contain his excitement. Meanwhile, Viscount Paul and Abel are pacing around in a panic while the ladies sip tea. Marilda tells her husband to sit down and chill out, or he'll wear a hole in the floor. Louise is trying to calm Abel down too, but Paul nearly loses it, questioning how he can relax when their family is on the line. Marilda insists they trust Damian, saying he's got it under control. Paul counters that's only because the kid is a whiz with a sword. Back inside, Damian is taking matters into his own hands after smashing one of the guards' heads into the floor. Olin jumps in surprise as Damian takes down the second guy who comes at him with a sword. Using mana to power up his hand, Damian grips this guy's throat and lifts him off the ground, asking how he dared to draw a weapon on a noble. He smiles at Olin, saying he's just defending himself. Olin is shaking in his seat as Damian steps closer. He admits he can't repay that big amount right now, to which Olin surprisingly agrees. The next day, Abel tells his father he's heartbroken over how violence won over justice. Meanwhile, Louise and Marilda wish Damian a safe trip and remind him to eat well. Abel, feeling utterly crushed, wonders why all this is happening, but Paul tells him to quit whining and go support his brother on his journey. Right after that, Agnes tells Damian it's a shame they're already saying goodbye. Damian goes up to her and thanks her for all her help. She just shrugs it off, saying she did what she had to do, and mentions they'll be leaving tomorrow since they've wrapped up their investigations. Before he takes off, Agnes hopes his journey goes well. She quickens the pace in reminding him that he can get in touch if he has a change of heart, but he cuts her off, saying he won't even let her finish. After breaking her heart a bit, he heads to the carriage to join Victor. Victor's already loaded the bags and is pretty pumped about how big the carriage is. Once they're inside, Olin greets them and promises to make sure nothing goes wrong on the trip. Damian likes his positive vibe and asks for lobster for lunch. Soon enough, they signal the driver, and off they go on their way to House Gold Pixie. Damian and the crew pulled up to the grand mansion of House Gold Pixie, and as Damian stood there with Victor and the envoy, he couldn't help but think that this place really lived up to its hype. With a smile, he told the envoy he wouldn't forget how smoothly things had gone, thanks to his help. The envoy replied that he'd already let the Duke know Damian was here. Inside the carriage, though, the envoy was sulking, annoyed with how things were turning out and frustrated with Damian's attitude. Once inside the mansion, Duke Adam Gold Pixie came in, clearly curious if Damian was the son of the Haxon family he'd heard about. Damian thanked him and thought to himself that he had a specific reason for being there. The Duke got straight to the point. Damian calmly admitted he'd borrowed money from the Duke's loan office, and with the repayment deadline fast approaching, he didn't have the cash to pay it back. Instead, he proposed he'd repay the debt in a different way, by taking down House Lionbloom. He boldly declared that his victory over them would wipe out his debt. The Duke and everyone around were taken aback by his surprising announcement. The Duke laughed it off, suggesting that Damian had probably heard the rumors and decided to come at a good time. Damian nodded, thinking about the recent buzz surrounding a big gold mine on the border. There was already some conflict between House Lionbloom and House Gold Pixie over who would control it, and duels among the lower-ranking knights had started to figure it out. He couldn't shake the feeling that those duels wouldn't go well for House Gold Pixie, and that Lionbloom would likely come out on top, spreading their influence while Gold Pixie faded away. It hit him that if he helped the Duke secure a win, he could repay his debt and also put Lionbloom in check, killing two birds with one stone. The Duke looked at Damian with interest, asking if he really had the guts to take on Lionbloom and take down one of their key players. Damian nodded with a calm smile, saying that the idea wasn't too far off from reality. The Duke grinned, mentioning he was struggling to find a good knight for the upcoming duel. Damian quickly stepped up. The Duke asked if he genuinely thought he could beat Michael Lionbloom. Damian flashed a confident smile, saying he was well aware of Michael's abilities, but was sure he wouldn't back down against him. Ernst Hovitz jumped in, warning the Duke not to take everything Damian said at face value, reminding him that rumors can get blown out of proportion. He went on to say that Lady Chelsea would be back soon with a knight ready for the duel, explaining that she had set off a while ago to find someone worthy to challenge Michael Lionbloom. Hovitz was sure she'd return soon and believed she'd find a fantastic duelist. Hovitz and the other knights grinned confidently when the Duke agreed with them. Damian, however, felt like Hovitz was trying to sabotage his plans. The Duke sat back, pondering what to do in this situation. Damian boldly told the Duke that everyone was totally mistaken. The Duke wanted to win the duel, he had to choose Damian as his knight. Hovitz, taken aback by Damian's guts, asked angrily if he even knew who Lady Chelsea planned to bring as a challenger. Damian offered Hovitz a chance to try to land a hit on him if that would ease his fears. Hovitz asked the Duke for permission to show Damian what he could do. The Duke agreed, so they headed to the dueling grounds to kick things off. Victor grew more anxious watching the night before Damian, feeling the intense and menacing energy radiating from him. Duke Gold Pixie ordered Hovitz to attack right away, and he agreed confidently. Hovitz stepped forward, mocking Damian and suggesting that if he begged, maybe he'd let him off easy. Damian, unfazed, just yawned and told Hovitz to hurry up. This pushed Hovitz over the edge, and he charged at Damian with all his might, but Damian remained calm and confident. Furious, charged in, declaring he'd smash Damian's arrogant face with one blow. Damian easily dodged the first strike, admitting to himself that Hovitz was skilled for a mid-rank knight. He figured that if he could read the direction of the attack well enough, blocking wouldn't be an issue. Hovitz swung hard and fast, but Damian managed to block it, though his sword started cracking under the pressure. Hovitz flashed a sneaky grin, wondering if he had actually tricked Damian into falling for his plan. In a surprising move, Hovitz landed a quick strike on Damian, causing him to scream in pain as blood splattered. And hey, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to Zucker Manhwa for more epic recaps coming your way.